Hello everyone, welcome back to Age of Nagash, which is a channel dedicated to Age of Sigmar. In this video we're going to be taking a look at the Flesh Eater Courts. I know I said I wouldn't do any more particularly death videos before the Battle Tome comes out, but from my understanding it looks like that the Flesh Eater Courts are not going to be in the Legions of Nagash Battle Tome. Now some people are disappointed at this, but for me I'm personally quite happy about it, as the Flesh Eater Court is an army I have about 5,000 points of, and I've played it a lot and I have lots of experience with it, so if it was going to be in the new Battle Tome and it was going to have a completely new change, it would be another thing I'd have to learn to get used to. Whereas if they keep it the same, it's nice because in the Legions of Nagash Battle Tome there's going to be plenty of new things to learn, like considering it's going to be every other death fraction apart from Flesh Eater Courts from what we can see so far. So it's a bit of a risk, but I think it's safe to do a Flesh Eater Court video at the moment, and hopefully in less than a week it's not going to become incorrect, the information I'm going to give you today. But I just really want to make a video about the Flesh Eater Courts. So in this video we're going to look at their lore, we're also going to look at the War Scrolls as well, and then we'll probably leave the Allegiance abilities for another video because I think this one's going to be quite long by itself. To start, we'll look at some of their lore, and this is quite interesting because the Flesh Eater Courts, majority of them aren't actually dead creatures, they're actually alive, so being in a Death Crown Alliance is quite unusual. So we'll start off with their background. So Flesh Eater Courts. Hidden among the ruins of the mortal realms thrive the Flesh Eater Courts. Bound by the madness, their abhorrent ghoul kings, throngs of mordants live out their pitiful lives, feasting upon the corpses provided by the endless war and strife of kingdom after kingdom. In every corner of the realms, nightmarish tales are told of the Flesh Eater Courts. When war and famine ravaged a land, its most desperate and determined people survive in any way they can. Given into hunger, they turn upon the fallen, the weak, and even each other in their quest for substance. Retreating into the shadowed ruins of their towns and cities, these cannibal cults devolve into hideous adaptations of society, kept alive on a diet of rancid flesh and bone. Even then, these creatures are worthy of pity, for their transformation into ghouls is not yet complete. Only once a cannibal partakes of an abhorrent ghoul king's feast do they become what is known as a mordant. The kings themselves are bestial vampires who rule over swathes of mortal realms. By the strength of their ragged courts, completely delusional, they have become known as abhorrents by the rest of their blood-sucking kin. Abhorrent ghoul kings are so lost in their madness that they believe themselves to be mortal monarchs. When they come to a place infested with cannibals, they see not monsters, but starving peasants and soldiers eager for the hand of a kind and just ruler. Each abhorrent ghoul king brings with him more than just dark rulership. They also spread their contagious madness. Weak minds are quickly turned, but even the strong-willed soon see the king as he sees himself. Before long, those that once hid in shame from the light stand tall, armoured in delusion. In a mockery of civilization, the king brings them into his court, dubbing the pale horrors that bow and scrap before him his mordants. By the will of their abhorrence do the Flesh Eater Courts conjugate in the realms, gathering up feasts from among the living and the dead. They rend apart their enemies and prepare the fallen flesh for their lord's culinary pleasures. Some among the mordants might even be blessed to sup the king's blood, in their minds drinking wine from their master's table. However, the thick crimson draught brings with it terrifying transformations. These creatures, aside as drooling horrors, slaved utterly to their new master, and bereft of what remained of their sanity. In time, a few of these blessed ones might even ascend from mordants to join the vampires' ranks of the abhorrents, and, if fortunate favours them, in turn found their own courts, thus spreading the madness of the Flesh Eater Courts. Now for a bit of a personal story of one of the Flesh Eater Courts. Lord Peregrine drove his sword up to the hilt into the monster's stomach,
The horrific thing hissed and spat at him, lashing out with filth-encrusted claws that sparkled off Peregrine's armour. "You are a curse upon the creation," growled Peregrine, feeling nothing but disgust for these craven creatures. With a boot he heaved the dying beast off his blade, causing an arc of gore to spray out like a red fountain. On all sides the sounds of battle filled the air. Peregrine's men-at-arms battled with cannibal beasts. Soldiers' brightly covered tabards spattered with rancid blood as they stove in skulls and open bellies with their axes and blades. "Show no mercy, men!" he screamed, charging once more. Somehow he had lost his blade, but it mattered not, and he seized another creature. This close he could see the naked terror in the thing's eyes. Leaning in, Peregrine wrapped armoured fingers around his neck. "Please," it grasped, but he was hardly listening. Not even the glimpsed reflection of red eyes and fangs in his victim's gaze was enough to stop what happened next. That's a bit of overall lore about the flesh-eater courts. We get a taste there how they do see themselves as heroic warriors, and even in the midst of battle they get the slight glimpses of their own reflections, but because they are so convinced themselves and so deluded that they are these heroic warriors and they can only see the enemies as either beasts or servants of chaos, that they do not even recognise the own horrors that they are themselves. We're now going to look at the individual units, starting with the backbone of the army, the men-at-arms, and some people also call these crypt ghouls. So, Rikin drools slaver from the mouths lined with rotting fangs as hordes of crypt ghouls hiss their adulation for their king. They scuttle into battle at his command, their chipped talons tearing at ground as their maws stretch wide in eager anticipation of the feast to come. The rules for men-at-arms: they have a movement of 6 inches, they have a 6-up save, they have bravery 10, and they have 1 wound. The sharpened teeth and filthy claws, range 1, 2 attacks, force the hit, force the wound, no rend, and 1 damage. The description: a unit of crypt ghouls has 10 or more models. They frantically tear into their victims with sharpened teeth and filthy claws. CRYPT: the leader of this unit is a CRYPT. You can add 1 to wound rolls for a CRYPT. Abilities: Battalion Strength. Crypt ghouls make 1 extra attack with their sharpened teeth and filthy claws if their unit has 20 or more models. Royal Approval. You can re-roll hit rolls of 1 for units of crypt ghouls that are within 15 inches of an abhorrent ghoul king from your army. And then their keywords: Death, Mordant, Flesh-Eater Courts, and crypt ghouls. So, let's go back from the start. So they have a movement of 6 inches, which is fast, especially for your battle line choices for a death army. 6-up save, it's not much, but for men-at-arms, they're not wearing particularly much armour, so it's a fair one, I suppose. 6-up save. Bravery 10, we come to expect with death, but like I say, these are alive, in the fluff, in the lore, in this narrative. They're alive. So having bravery 10 is, it's pretty good. You've got to respect them for that. And then 1 wound apiece. They're small models, so that's what you have to come to expect. And then their sharpened teeth and filthy claws, range of 1 inch. 2 attacks, that is good. As a basic, that is good. 4s and 4s, no rend, 1 damage. So quite a lot of attacks. No rend, obviously, but like I said, they're basic troops, so that's pretty good. And then the GHAST, the leader of the unit, gets a +1 to wound rolls, which is, it's okay, it's an ability, but I just much prefer it being an extra attack, and maybe an extra attack is, mathematically better, but I'd like him just to have an extra attack instead, just so you can roll his attacks with the rest of your ghouls, just so it doesn't take extra time rolling for, individual ghouls. You can just roll them all at once. But +1 to wound, why not? And then the abilities: Battalion Strength. Crypt ghouls make 1 extra attack with their sharpened teeth and filthy claws. The unit has 20 or more models. Right, okay, so this is good, because with crypt ghouls you do want to take them in large numbers, unless you are just using them as your battle line, as you want to have a really cheap battle line. So you're going to be taking these
ideally in units of 20 or more anyway. So now they're making 3 attacks each, which is really good, especially paired with their next ability, Royal Approval. You can reroll hit rolls of 1 for units of Crypt Ghouls that are within 15 inches of an abhorrent Ghoul King from your army. Now, this abhorrent Ghoul King, it can be just 1 on foot, it can be 1 on a Terrorgeist, it can be 1 on a Zombie Dragon, as long as it has the keyword. So, these guys, like I say, you want to have them in units of 20 or more. So, on basic, 2 attacks, with 20 or more, 3 attacks. 4s and 4s, so 50-50. No rend, 1 damage, but they're rerolling 1s to, to hit if they're within 15 inches of the important Ghoul King. And that's not a small radius, that's a large radius. You can, a lot of the time, if you string out your ghouls a little bit, have your Ghoul King quite far back away from your Ghoul unit, so there's there's still a threat from shooting for your Ghoul King, as shooting in Age of Sigmar can be quite powerful. However, there's less of a threat of it, because unless the enemy has lots of range, you could string out your ghouls just to make sure there's always 1 within range of 15 of your Ghoul King. So you'll be getting the reroll hit rolls of 1 continuously. And when you're chucking buckets of attacks, just re-rolling, even if it's just 1s, is really good. So, and then keywords, we've got Death, which is obvious, Mordant, which is for the majority of the Flesh-Eater Courts, and then Flesh-Eater Courts, and Crypt Ghouls. So, yeah, not too many keywords, but all the essential ones there. And they're a good unit. I mean, when you first look at them, yeah, they've got a 6-up save, and well, to be honest, the 6-up save is the only really bad thing on their stats, because their attack starts with 2, which for battle line, they're 100 points, these guys. They're battle line for all death, currently speaking at the moment, and obviously battle line for your Flesh-Eater Court armies. So they're not bad stats. And like a 6-up save, yeah, I mean, it's not the best, obviously, but you chuck a Mystic Shield on these guys as a 5-up, and as we'll be getting to in a minute, there's just so many ways to bring back these models, so it doesn't matter how many die necessarily, as long as you've got the heroes in place that bring them back. So as a start, for your basic unit in this army, not bad, with their, like I say, their weapon having 2 attacks, 4s and 4s, 1 damage, and they have an easy way to just get an extra attack there, and you can re-roll hit rolls or 1 for them if they're within 15 inches of the Ghoul King. So not a bad start at all for these men-at-arms. Now we're going to look at the hero version of the Crypt Ghouls. This is how we're going to do every unit in this army, as most of the troops in this army have a hero version. So we're going to look at the main unit, and then we'll look at the hero after in comparison. Okay, so for the Crypt Ghouls we have the CRYPT Courtier. So the lore behind this guy is the CRYPT Courtiers are vile creatures gifted in the ways of war, displaying a measure of intelligence beyond that of their base brothers. Their bent-back champions make effective field commanders for the apparent Ghoul King's armies. Forever jokering for position, they make fawning after their king their first priority, and hold various titles to denote their status. In their minds they are noble heroes of the realm, clad in shining armour, with pennants snapping on the ends of their weapons. So armed with delusion, they proudly lead the court's soldiers to war, sniffing out tasty prey either at the head of endless ranks of foot soldiers, or raging ahead with scouting parties. Okay, so now to look at their war scroll. So the CRYPT Courtier has a 6-inch move, 5+ save, bravery 10 and 4 wounds. Has 2 melee weapons, the Bone Club and Filthy Claws, so a range of 1, that's 3 attacks, 3's to hit, 3's to wound, no rend, 1 damage. Filthy Claws, range 1, 2 attacks, 4's to hit, 3's to wound, no rend and 1 damage. Okay, so the stats there, 6-inch movement, it's good, it is fast for death, and it's something we're going to see a lot for this army. Has a 5+ save, 1 better than the Crypt Ghouls. Ideally for a hero, 5+ save is still quite low, but it's better than 6.
So bravery 10 and 4 wounds. Not many wounds, but this is only a little hero. He is literally the same size as a Crypt Ghoul because he comes in the same kit as he is. Well, he is essentially a Crypt Ghoul. You just end up putting him on a bigger base and make him look a little bit different. And then the attacks, yeah, I mean, to be fair, I mean, obviously there's no rend, there's only 1 damage, but it's a lot of attacks this guy's chucking out. You know, he's got 5 attacks in total, which, first on the Bone Club, to hit on a 3, and to wound on a 3 with 3 attacks, merely no rend and only 1 damage, but that's not bad, because this guy does only cost 80 points. Right, but he gets good when we look at his abilities. So, muster men-at-arms. In each of your hero phases, roll 6 dice. For each roll of a 2 or more, add 1 model to a unit of Crypt Ghouls from your army within 10 inches. You can dispute these models between any units within range if you wish. So this is good. This is what I was telling you about when we talked about the Crypt Ghouls not long ago. Being able to replenish those units is huge, especially as this guy only costs 80 points. So if you're taking a lot of Crypt Ghouls in your army, you can easily have more than 1 of these in there. And it's on you roll 6 dice, and it's on a 2 or more, and it's for units within 10 inches. It's not a huge range, but it's definitely not a short range either. You can keep this guy a little bit back from the rest of the units to try and help him from being shot to death, as he's only got 4 wounds, so that won't be entirely hard to do. But no, if you're taking Crypt Ghouls, this is the reason why you would take this hero, just to replenish them. And like I say, it's only 80 points, so he does the job pretty well. And then his next ability is Trophy Hunter. If this model slays an enemy model in the combat phase, add 1 to the attack characteristics of any melee weapons used by a unit of Crypt Ghouls from your army within 10 inches for the remainder of the phase. Okay, so this sounds really good, but it's not pointless. I mean, it can be in use sometimes, but it's not as good as it sounds in practicality because, okay, so it's not hard for this guy to kill 1 enemy model, especially if it's like a basic enemy unit with a 5-up save of 1 wound. But however, in most cases, if you wanted to get this ability off, you would be attacking with him before you attacked with the Crypt Ghouls. So, yeah, your Crypt Ghouls will make an extra attack, but depending on what you're attacking, the enemy would be able to attack your Crypt Ghouls before they got to attack them. So, with the amount you could lose, it's just not really worth it. I mean, you always sort of want to attack the Crypt Ghouls first anyway, and you don't want the Crypt-Ghast Courtier getting into combat in the first place because, like I said, he's only got 5+ save and 4 wounds, and you don't want him to die, you just want him to bring back your models. A time I could see this ability being useful is if you're, I don't know, you're playing a competitive match play game and you're drawing on objective points at the moment, and you've got 1 turn to try and push the enemy off 1 objective to overtake them and win the game, but you just don't know if you have enough attacks to wipe them off. If you get your unit of ghouls in combat with this enemy unit, particularly if it's quite a weak one and it's just hanging on, and you get this Crypt-Ghast Courtier in combat with them, let him attack first, and then you're not worrying about how much retaliation power the enemy unit has if it's quite a weak unit, or it's just holding the objective. Now you've made the Crypt Ghouls get an extra attack, so if they've got 20 more models, they're making like 4 attacks each, and they would be able to wipe off this enemy unit on this objective. And just basically what I'm saying is he can be used to do a clear up job, but the Trophy Hunter ability is not used that much. Just in general, keep this guy back, use him to replenish your Crypt Ghouls, and that'll be it, and try and hide him behind things because it's not very tall, so line of blocking terrain should help this guy out a lot, even if it's just like a tiny little bit of terrain feature. It's not hard for him to hide behind. Right, and then his keywords, so Deaf, Mordant, Flesh-Eater Courts, Heroes, Courtier, and Crypt-Ghast Courtier. So the same as Crypt Ghouls, apart from he's got the Hero keyword and Courtier. So could be useful for some battle plans, like Duality of Death, where you've got to catch your objectives with your heroes. Admittedly though, if you need to catch your objective with this hero, it sounds like you're in a lot of trouble, to be honest. But and he's got the Courtier keyword, so you know, generally the more keywords you have, the better. Now to look at something a bit bigger, the Crypt Horrors. Lumbering and snarling into battle come the Crypt Horrors, their flesh stuck through with jagged bones and dripping blades. These are the knights of their court,
Armed not with sword and steed, but claw and fang, they are monstrous beasts, though loyal and eager to serve their lord in battle. So in game, the CRYPTors, they have a 7-inch movement, 5 up save, 10 bravery and 4 wounds. They have 1 melee weapon, clubs and septic talons, range 1 inch, 3 attacks, 4 to hit, 3 to wound, no rend, 2 damage. So to start, range of 7, that is good, something especially for this sort of size. Save of 5+, you know, it's not particularly good. However, there's a regeneration mechanic, which we'll come to in a moment, similar to what it was with the ghouls. And then 10 bravery, same for all death units, but like I say, these guys aren't technically dead, so it's still very nice to have. And then 4 wounds is a lot of wounds. So their weapon, so got a range of 1, so you know, obviously the shortest range, but if it is claws, you know, there's only so much you can do with it. And then 3 attacks, 4 to hit, 3 to wound, no rend, 2 damage. So that is a nice attack characteristic, especially how, you know, 2 damage and they're making 3 attacks each. The only obvious sign there that it could do with a little bit better is just the lack of rend, because I've taken these guys against some armies and they've done tremendously well, and then I've taken them against a Stormcast army with a 2-up save, re-rolling 1s, and it doesn't matter if you're doing 2 damage, these guys just cannot break through the armour. So it is a bit dependent on what army you're fighting, but you know, what in Warhammer isn't, to be honest. So that is good attacks. Right, the description. So a unit of CRYPTors has 3 or more models. They fight with clubs and septic talons. The Crypt Haunter. The leader of this unit is a Crypt Haunter. The Crypt Haunter makes 4 attacks. So their abilities. Warrior Elite. Each time you make a wound roll of 6 for a CRYPTor, that attack inflicts 3 damage instead of 2. So this is really good, because like things I've already mentioned in other videos, like the scenery table, which I talked about yesterday, how one of the scenery effects could be mystical, and if you watch that video you will know that that effect can allow you to re-roll wound rolls. So if you can do that, re-rolling wound rolls with these guys, you know, like doing 2 damage is good enough, and then if on a roll of 6 to wound you do 3 damage, it's really good. You can, if you get these guys in against just enemy horde units, really these guys can just rip them to pieces, especially if a big unit of them. So that's a really good ability, that Warrior Elite. And then Noble Blood. Each CRYPTor heals 1 wound in each of your hero phases. So this does help the fact that they've only got a 5+ save, but when it says each CRYPTor heals 1 wound in each of your hero phases, bear in mind that you can only stack wounds on 1 model until it dies, so you will only be healing 1 wound in total with this ability for your unit, even if you had a unit of 9 of these guys. But it's still good, you know, any type of healing, never turn it down, you know, it's always welcome. And then the last ability, which I think is the best one, Chosen of the King. You can reroll failed hit rolls for this unit if it is within 15 inches of the abhorrent Ghoul King from your army. So this is very similar to what we saw with the Crypt Ghouls, where they could reroll hit rolls of 1, but with these guys you can reroll all failed hit rolls, which makes this unit so much more reliable in its damage output. I mean, like I said, if you can find a way to make them reroll wound rolls, and this unit can easily be within 15 inches of a abhorrent Ghoul King, you know, especially if you're playing, you know, your game right and your army right. So if you can tick those 2 boxes, you can make this unit reroll hits, reroll wounds, admittedly no rend, but 2 damage, potentially 3 damage. It's really good, especially with those 3 attacks each, and the leader makes 4. It's really, really nice. And like I say, there are ways out there to make them reroll wound rolls. We'll get to another one probably towards the end of the video. But no, that's why I really like these guys. The only problem is the rend. The lack of rend is it's a problem for these guys. I mean, these guys are 160 points for 3 models. I would almost rather than be like, I don't know, 180 points maybe, and then they get the -1 rend. I mean, I know that's easy to say and stuff, but then again, if they had the -1 rend, apart from their save only being a 5 up, they wouldn't really have a downside. So you know, fair enough, they don't have the rend. There's other things in the Flesh-Eater Court army that have the rend and can pierce through the enemy's armour. So these guys are your designated horde killers, and they do a great job of that. And then their keywords: Death, Mordant, Flesh-Eater Courts, and Crypt Horrors. So same basic keywords we're seeing for the Flesh-Eater Court army, but no, very good. I do rate these a lot, to be honest, because I haven't actually used them that much regularly, because I've been using a lot of Crypt Flayers, which we'll get to shortly. But I've got a game on Friday where I think I will be using at least a unit of 9 of these guys. I would say a unit of 12, but I've got 3 to make. However, I just want to see what the Death Battle Tome is going to be like, so I might make these 3 Crypt Horrors. They're still brand new, so I might make them to VARGHULF. We'll see what happens with that. But there's a good chance of me running 9 of these this week. So, and hopefully it will just tear through things. That's the plan. So for 160 points, these guys, and then if you have their hero version, which we will get to in a moment, these guys, the in a Flesh-Eater Court army, if you have their hero version as your general, these guys become battle line. So, you know, there's a plus there. Having these monstrosities of an infantry be your battle line is fantastic, really. Now, to look at one of the most heroic warriors within the knightly orders of the Flesh-Eater Courts, the Crypt Haunter Courtiers, beasts of rotting flesh and twisted bone. The Crypt Haunter Courtiers are among the strongest of an abhorrent king's mordant servants. They have supped from the vampiric veins, and his dark magic has transformed them. Most mordants, given a pure draught of the king's blood, dissolve even further into savage madness, or tear themselves apart in a frenzy of self-loathing. But those who survive are reborn with monstrous strength. In battle, they are brutal fighters who lead from the front, bathing in a rain of vicious as they tear their opponent apart. Crypt Horrors respond to the orders of these courtiers in their madness, seeing them as bold commanders who lead the way through any danger. Now let's see what this guy's like in the game. So the Crypt Haunter Courtier has a 7-inch movement, a 4+ save, bravery 10, and 6 wounds. He has 2 melee weapons, massive bone club, range 1, 3 attacks, force to hit, freeze to wound, no rend, 3 damage. His other weapon, a rancid talons, 1-inch range, 2 attacks, force to hit, freeze to wound, no rend, 1 damage. Okay, so let's start at the little spindly wheel. So he has 7-inch movement, which is good. It matches the Crypt Horrors. A 4+ save, which is the best save we've seen so far for the Flesh-Eater Court, so that's nice. A 4+ save is it is good. You can look at things like Stormcast, and they've got 3+ saves, and other armies like that. But realistically, a 4+ save is generally as good as you're going to get for a lot of things. Bravery 10, and then 6 wounds. So Bravery 10, like I said, is standard, and then 6 wounds is good. It's a nice amount of wounds. So a lot of heroes out there only have 5. Admittedly, this guy is pretty big, as he is, well, pretty much exactly the same size as the Crypt Horror, so having 6 wounds makes sense. His melee weapons, the first one, the Massive Bone Club, it is good. Like I said, it had 3 attacks, force to hit, freeze to wound, no rend, and 3 damage. I mean, the only thing stopping me from saying, you know, that's amazing is having a -1 rend. But like we talked about when we looked at the Crypt Horrors, obviously these guys are not meant to have rend. You have other units in your army to deal with high armor saves. These guys are clearing hordes, and with a courtier you don't really want to get them into combat unless you have to. So, you know, having no rend, fair enough. Like I said, yeah, it's a little bit annoying. You would like the rend, but otherwise, why would you take the other units that are meant to beat your armor saves when these guys can do it? So that attack is good though, doing 3 damage, and he has 3 attacks to that, and then failing if he manages to miss with that weapon. He's got 2 other attacks with rancid talons, which are only a 4 to hit, 3 to wound, no rend, 1 damage, but you know, it's a potential to do 2 extra damage there. Okay, so then the abilities, Noble Blood. This model heals 1 wound in each of your hero phases. So this is like we saw for the Crypt Horrors. I believe it's exactly the same ability, Noble Blood. So they drink from the vampire's blood. Like a vampire, they get to heal wounds, essentially. And the next ability, Chosen of the King. You can reroll failed hit rolls for this model if it was within 15 inches of an apparent Ghoul King from your army. So this is the same for the CRYPT, which is really good, especially this weapon he's got doing 3 damage, 3 attacks with it. Rerolling failed hit rolls, which is, he's hitting on a 4, so pretty easy for him to do that. And then wounded on a 3. So if he can reroll the hit rolls, which he should be able to in the army, he only has to wound on a 3, which he's got. He's got the good average of getting that. And then his next ability, which is his best one, Muster King's Chosen. In each of your hero phases, roll 6 dice. For each roll of a 5 or more, add 1 model to a unit of crypt horrors from your army within 10 inches. You can distribute these models between any units within range if you wish. So this is the same as we saw for the CRYPT Courtier, bringing back ghouls. Apart from that, the CRYPT Courtier is bringing back crypt horrors, which, I'll remind you, are 4 wound models that have really, really good attacks. So, on average, bringing back, what is it? Bringing back 2 of those on average each turn with him is good. I mean, this is where the whole army lives, basically. It's how it survives. It's just a regeneration of not so much wounds, but just a regeneration of models. And this is why, if I take crypt horrors, like I said, I haven't done for a while, but I do a very similar thing for the flares. I won't just take one of these heroes. I'll take as many as I can, as many as I can fit in my army, just to keep on bringing back my models, because the enemy will realise what this model can do, and he realise that to defeat the army, kill the heroes, then you can't bring back models. So they will snipe out your characters as quickly as they can. However, if they don't have shooting or, potent magic, they're in a bit of a trouble one. But so you want to bring as many of these guys as you can to battle to make the most of this ability. In the list I'm running at the moment with 21 flares, and it has 3 courtiers in it, means that I roll I keep my army very close to each other as much as I can. So a lot of the time I'm rolling 18 dice in my hero phases, and 5s and 6s bring back my flares. So it's the biggest strength of the army. You want to use it as much to your advantage. Okay, and then his keywords. So Death, Mordant, Flesh Eater, Court, Hero, Courtier, CRYPT Courtier. So it's the same as we essentially saw for the GHAST Courtier. So yeah, not bad keywords there. And overall, bear in mind his main ability is to be a support character, bringing back your horrors. He's not bad at all. I mean, he costs 120 points, I believe. He costs 120 points. So he's not particularly expensive, and his damage output is good as well. But try to not get him in combat. Only get him in combat if you need to. And he's got a 4+ save, so that's not bad either. So I rate him pretty highly. If you're taking cryptos, I say I rate him highly, but if you're taking cryptos, you have to take this guy anyway. I mean, we'll get to the VARGHULF a bit later, who does the same ability, but it's a lot more points. So you might as well take as many of these as you can. If you're taking a lot of horrors and you're not taking the CRYPT Courtier, like I say, you're doing yourself a disservice, really. Now to look at the Pegasus Knights of the army, the Crypt Flares. Crypt Flares haunt the night dark shadows against a moonless sky, as their keen eyes seek out enemies of the court. With grasping claws they snatch helpless victims off their feet, sinking their fangs into their captives, even as they soar back into the sky, leaving behind naught but spilled blood. Okay, now to see what these guys are like in the game. So Crypt Flares, they have a 12-inch movement, a 5+ save, bravery 10, and 4 wounds. They have a missile weapon, which, I repeat, for death, they have a missile weapon. So it's called the Fearsome Battle Cry. It has a range of 10 inches, it has 1 attack, and then it says see below. So we'll get to that now. So the Fearsome Battle Cry. Crypt Flares can unleash a shrill scream that can kill and disorder their victims. Each model in the unit can make a Fearsome Battle Cry attack in the shooter's phase. To do so, pick a target within 10 inches and roll a dice. Add 1 to the result. If the total is higher than that unit's bravery, it suffers a number of mortal wounds equal to the difference. So, you roll 1 dice. So, okay, we'll start from the beginning. So, you pick an enemy unit within 10 inches, you roll 1 dice, you add that, and +1 to it. So, the most you can get is 7, as you're rolling a dice and adding 1 to it. And difference between that and the enemy's bravery, they take mortal wounds. A lot of the time, this never comes up, and if you're playing against, let's say, demon armies, you don't even mention this to your opponent, because the only way to get this off is if your enemy has bravery 6, then you roll a dice, and on a 6 you add 1 to it, and then that's a 7. The difference between 7 and 6 is 1, so they take 1 mortal wound. You know, if you play against like things like Skaven and stuff, which, to be honest, I sometimes play them sometimes, but not too much. So I mainly play against high bravery armies. I do sometimes play against Stormcast, like I say, and it is good against them, to be fair. So, no, I say it's good against them. You know, it has a chance of getting off against them. However, thanks to the new Legion's abilities, there are ways to make the enemy minus bravery a lot easier. So this can be particularly useful for that. So it can be particularly useful, but that is the best way to get the use out of this. There's an artifact out there. I'll go more detail into it when I do the Legion's abilities, but there's an artifact you can give one of your Flesh-Eater Court heroes -2 to the enemy's bravery within 6 inches of them. So now if the enemy had, let's say they had bravery 6, now they've got bravery 4, and then you roll a dice. So if you get a 4, you're doing 1 mortal wound. You get a 5, you're doing 2, and if you get a 6, you're doing 3. Now things get really good with the shooting attack. So the Fearsome Battle Cry is one of those abilities that looks absolutely pointless a lot of the time. However, if you use synergies and you stack things with it, it can be really devastating. Right, so that's their missile weapons. So onto their melee weapons. Just 1. Piercing Talons and Claws. Range 1 inch. 4 attacks. Force to hit. Freeze to wound. -1 rend. 1 damage. Okay, so that's not a bad attack in itself. It is only 1 damage. Unlike the crit horse doing 2 damage. However, you get 1 extra attack and there's a -1 rend to it. Like I said, this unit is more designed to pierce the enemy's armor. And with a, you know, like for example, they move 12 inches, which is really, really fast and really nice, especially for a unit that is can handle itself in the combat as well. So yeah, moving 12 inches is good. 5+ save, saves the same as the horrors. And if you don't know, the crypt flayers are the same kits that you can build the horrors from, so they're the same size models. The difference is one of them's got wings, the other one hasn't. So having a 5+ save makes sense, as well as having 4 wounds each. They're the same sort of size, so makes sense having 4 wounds, and bravery 10 is the same for death. So the description: a unit of crypt flayers has 3 or more models. They take wing before descending with a fearsome battle cry to skewer their prey with piercing talons and claws. The Crypt Infernal. The leader of this unit is a Crypt Infernal. A Crypt Infernal makes 5 attacks with its piercing talons and claws. So standard for a lot of things, the leader just makes an extra attack, which is good because, you know, like I was saying with the Crypt Ghouls, having the leader get +1 to wound just means you have to roll his dice separately. So getting an extra attack instead is probably mathematically better, and it just makes the game easier. Crypt Flayers can fly as they have wings, so you know, fairly obvious, but being able to fly and have 12-inch movement is really good. Abilities: Skewering Talons. Each time you make a hit roll for 6 for Crypt Flayers, piercing talons and claws, that attack has impaled its target, inflicted a mortal wound instead of its normal damage. So this is really good. This is the same as like Spirit Hosts that we've looked at on a 6. However, these guys hit on a 4 normally, so if, for example, Spirit Hosts, yeah, they're really good, they make 6 attacks each and do more wounds than 6s. However, if the enemy makes a -1 bravery, now they're not doing more wounds on 6s to hit, they're literally only hitting on 6s, which is really what neuters them. However, these guys, even if they are -1 to hit, which can happen quite a bit because the enemy can be a pain in the arse, you're still hitting on 5s, you know, so that's pretty good. And then because you make a hit roll of a 6, doing a mortal wound, you know, there are ways, like I talked about with damned terrain, the best example to try and get pluses to hit rolls, meaning this going on 5s and 4s, which can be really good. And then yeah, and especially just how many attacks they're making as well. It's a really good ability for them. And like I said, this is the unit to get through the enemy's armour. You've got -1 rend, and you've got chances of doing mortal wounds. So yeah, this will chew through. If you got a lot of these, like I'd take units of minimum 9 really, sometimes 12. Which, you know, to be fair, that is the most you can take, just to make the most out of all their attacks. And you can really, if you're lucky, chew through even huge blocks of liberators with this unit. Okay, and then the next ability is the Fearsome Battle Cry, which we've already talked about. So their keywords: Death, Mordant, Flesh Eater Courts, Crypt Flares. So yeah, basic keywords, and then they're good. This is the unit you're going to use to punch through the enemies' units with armor. You do have also monsters in this army that can punch through the enemy's armor, but this will be a good generic source to deal with high armor saves and stuff like that. Now to look at the hero version of these Pegasus Knights, the Crypt Infernal Courtiers. Crypt Infernal Courtiers are created when a Crypt Flayer has performed a heroic deed that the king deems a worthy of reward. A banquet is held where individuals so honoured are fed the flesh of an undead dragon. Their guts mutate agonizingly, allowing these predators of the sky to exhale lethal clouds of noxious fumes, much like the beasts that they have eaten. These flying courtiers lead the Dead Watch, the abhorrent Ghoul King's personal bodyguard. Gifted with exceptional senses, they can also detect enemies from leagues away, identifying their victims by scent alone, and swoop off into the night to bring back glory prizes for their dark master. When an opponent rides to war astride his terrorgeist or zombie dragon, Crypt Infernal Courtiers often soar at his side, vying for their lord's attention. Screaming summons to their kin, the courtiers lead the sky against the most formidable enemies, bringing back spoils and prisoners in an attempt to curry favour with their abhorrent king. Okay, in game, the Crypt Infernal Courtier has a 12-inch movement, a 4+ save, bravery 10, and 6 wounds. He has a missile weapon as well, so the Fortitude Breath. Range 9 inches, 1 attack, force to hit, freeze to wound, -1 rend, D3 damage. Melee weapons: Skewering Talons, range 1, 5 attacks, force to hit, freeze to wound, -1 rend, damage 2. Okay, so let's look at its movement. So movement 12, it's good, it keeps up with the normal players as well. Saver 4, which is a parallel to the Crypt Haunter Courtier, and that's the same with bravery 10 and 6 wounds. So his basic stats, apart from the movement, are the same as the Crypt Haunter Courtier. With 6 wounds, you know, is not bad, especially how there's a lot of 5 damage attacks out there, so they won't be able to wipe out this guy in one go. And then his missile weapon, Fortitude Breath. I prefer this a lot more generally than the screams from the normal flares, as it always has a chance of doing something, no matter what the enemy's bravery is. You know, it's just a standard 9-inch range, 1 attack, force to hit, freeze to wound, -1 rend, D3 damage, which is nice rather than just 1 damage. So yeah, shooting attack not bad, you know, especially for death. And then the melee weapon, Skewering Talons. 1-inch range, 5 attacks, very nice. Force to hit, freeze to wound, -1 rend, 2 damage. I can't really see much wrong with that. I mean, can't really see much wrong with that at all. I mean, like, you could say like -1 rend, you know, could be nicer, but you know, Archaon Slayer of Kings only has -1 rend, so you know, he should be first in line to complain about that. But no, that is good, and this guy is more expensive than the Crypt Haunter Courtier, this guy being 140 points for the hero, but you know, he's got a better movement, and we'll see his other abilities. So the Crypt Infernal Courtier can fly like the flares. Ability: Screwing Strike. So each time you make a hit roll of 6 for a Crypt Infernal Courtier, Screwing Talons, the attack has impaled its victims, inflicting 2 mortal wounds instead of its normal damage, Right, so this is the same we saw for the flares, apart from, obviously, the Infernal Courtier's damage is 2, not 1. So you do 2 mortal wounds. Admittedly, with my personal one I've got, he never manages to get any mortal wounds on this. I don't think he's ever got it once, bearing in mind he gets 5 attacks, so not on the average, it doesn't mean he'll get it, every time, but, he should get it once in a while, and he hasn't, unfortunately. But the one day he does get it, doing 2 more wounds on a 6 to hit is really good. So, yeah, especially how we're talking about like horrors not being able to punch through armor, this guy certainly can. However, it might seem very good this, but you do not want to get them into combat. You want to try and keep your courtiers away from combat and only bring them in if it's necessary. They're their support models first, aggressive attacking models after. Okay, his next ability, Muster Royal Guard. In each of your hero phases, roll 6 dice. For each roll of a 5 or more, add 1 model to a unit of crit flares from your army within 10 inches. You can distribute these models between any units within range if you wish. So this is the exact same as the Crypt Haunter Courtier, apart from you bringing back flares. I said how good it was for the Crypt Haunter Courtier. That goes for the flares as well. It just really helps regenerate your army and make it as most effective as you can. Like I say, this is why these guys are support heroes. Yes, they can do a bit of damage in combat, but only bring them in combat if you have to. And then his keywords are Death, Mordant, Flesh Eater Court, Hero, Courtier, Crypt Infernal, Courtier. So what you expect coming to when we've read all the keywords before. So yeah, not bad stats. Bear in mind he is a support character. And as he has got 12-inch movement, you can get him to support the flare units you need to as the game develops. Now to move on to the big nasty brother of the Crypt Infernal Courtier, the VARGHULF Courtiers. Favoured servants of the king, VARGHULF Courtiers hold the highest rank a Mordant can earn. They are the most trusted members of the court and the most likely to lead an army if the king is otherwise occupied. VARGHULF Courtiers are the only members of the court that can ascend to the rank of Magnus Gultrop, leader of the hand-picked Royal Mordant. As befits their potent position, they are gore-drenched monstrosities in combat, second only in their fury to the abhorrent king. When surrounded by their enemies, they enter terrifying frenzy, slaughtering them faster than an eye can follow. As they tear a red road through a battle, Mordants scurry in their wake, snatching up any discarded pieces of meat. VARGHULFs are possessed of a ferocious hunger and rip great chunks off their prey, which they cram down their gullets then and there. As they lick their bloody maws, wounds disappear, muscles re-knit, and rents in their flesh close up. In moments they feed on more than just flesh, however. With loiling tongues they lap up dark magic from the air, devouring the sorcerous tendrils that erupt from abhorrent ghoul kings. When he casts a spell or summons the dead, this foul energy strengthens the beast, giving it strength beyond even that suggested by its massive frame. Now in game, the VARGHULF Courtier has a movement of 10 and has a 5-up save, bravery 10 and 8 wounds. It has 2 melee weapons, immense claws, 2-inch range, 4 attacks, freeze to hit, freeze to wound, -1 rend, 2 damage, dagger-like fangs, range 1 inch, attacks 1, freeze to hit, 2's the wound, -2 rend, D3 damage. Okay, so to start, movement 10 is really fast, not as fast as the flares of course, but for example, this guy is as fast as Chaos Knights, which are cavalry, so not bad going. 5+ save is the weakest part of his stat wheel, but he's not wearing any armor, he's fairly big. Would be nice if it was a 6+ save. No, sorry, not 6+ save. I mean, would be nice if it was a 4+ save even. Don't know why I said 6+. That would not be nice at all. So you know, this guy is alright. The enemy chucks -1 rend on him, still gets a save, but if the enemy chucks, I've had a Doomguard with Catapult shoot this guy with -2 rend, and, you know, it's like taken off the board, like, first turn. So, -5, sorry, 5 up save is not the best, but, you know, it's not the worst. And then, you know, Bravery 10, we expect that, and then 8 wounds is nice. That's a nice amount of wounds, especially how this guy does not have a damage table like a lot of monsters out there. Even though this guy is not a monster, you know, he's quite often referred to one as his attacks are pretty devastating. So 8 wounds is good. And then his melee weapon, so Immense Claws, 2-inch range, 4 attacks, freeze to hit, freeze to wound, -1 rend, 2 damage. Is very good, especially how this is a courtier, and like when we get to his rules, I'll say it again, it's a support model. It's not meant to be in combat, only if you're forced to put them in combat. So if you have to put this guy in combat, he can do quite a lot of damage. And then his next attack is only 1 attack, but freeze to hit, 2 to wound, -2 rend, D3 damage is really good. I mean, I've quite often, if I have to attack this guy, he can be quite lucky with his attacks and do a lot of damage through. So really not bad, and this guy costs 160 points, so it's not too expensive either. I mean, when you look at his attacks, you think, you know, 160 points for that, you know, you're probably not getting more for your, you know, you're probably not getting more attacks for your cost of points there. However, like I say, he's a support character, so the fact that he's pretty good in combat as well, you know, it's just more for your money, really. And then his ability, so fly, so the VARGHULF can fly, so that's good, despite how many holes he's got on his wings. The abilities to the king, so in each of your hero phases, roll 6 dice. For each roll of 2 or more, add 1 model to a unit of crypt ghouls from your army within 10 inches. However, for any rolls of 5 or more, you can instead add 1 model to a unit of crypt horrors or crypt flayers from your army within 10 inches. You can distribute these models between any units within range if you wish. Okay, so this is very good. This is the best ability like this we've seen to be able to regenerate models. So he's got, he's basically the Crypt GHAST, Crypt Haunted Courtier, and the Crypt Infernal Courtier all in one. He can bring back ghouls, he can bring back horrors, and he can bring back flares. So he can do this. The only downside is, like, for example, if you're just running ghouls, this guy's 160 points, and then the Crypt GHAST Courtier is 80 points, so this guy is double the points cost. So if you're only running ghouls really in your army, do you really need this guy? You've got to think about it. However, if you're running a mixture of everything, he's a really good addition to your army. And in my flare army, where I just run flares, apart from I have added in an addition of 20 ghouls just to hold objectives and stuff, this guy is good because, like I said, I'm mainly using him just to bring back flares. But he's got 8 wounds, so it's hard for the enemy to try and snipe him off the board straight away. So it's just the longer you can have these heroes on the board to bring back your models, the better. Use your flares, your horrors, and even your ghouls to do the damage to the enemy. Use your courtiers just to reinforce them and bring them back. So that's a really good ability to the king. And then it's got 3 more abilities. So feed on dark magic. If this model is within 8 inches of a Flesh Eater Court wizard that successfully casts a spell, you can reroll all failed hit rolls that turn. Okay, so in most cases you're going to have a Flesh Eater Court wizard in your army, especially if you're running lots of ghouls and lots of horrors. You want the Ghoul King to make them be able to reroll the hit rolls. So, you know, he's obviously a Flesh Eater Court wizard, like we'll get to in a moment. But within 18 inches of him, so they don't even have to be that close at all, to be honest. So and re-rolling failed hit rolls for this guy is really good. I mean, then he's, you know, like his Immense Claws got 4 attacks, hit on a freeze, re-rolling hit rolls, wounded on a freeze. Like I said, there's ways to make him be able to re-roll wound rolls as well. But anyway, so, you know, hit on freeze, re-rolling, wounded on freeze, and then -1 rend, 2 damage. And then his other attack, only 1 attack, hits on a 3, so sometimes you're unlucky and you fail. However, if you're re-rolling that and you make it, you only need to wound on 2. You know, admittedly you could get a 1, and, you know, that's really frustrating and annoying, but, you know, things happen. But you're more than likely going to pass. So, and then it goes on to -2 rend, which is good, and D3 damage. So this guy is not even meant to be in combat. When you need him to be, he can do so much damage just by himself. Yeah, it's a really nice ability. And then his next one, so the King's Champion, if there are at least 10 models, or 10 enemy models within 3 inches after a VARGHULF Courtier piles in and attacks, make 6 attacks rather than 4 for its immense claws. So again, this is just making him more powerful in combat, especially with his rerolling his hit rolls. However, I very often don't get this off. There's never usually 10 models within 3 inches of the VARGHULF. I'm not saying that's impossible to do, because especially if you had, if you charge them into an enemy horde unit with, they're all on 25mm bases, after he piles in, there's a good chance you'll be able to make him do the extra attacks. However, as he's a courtier, when I have to get him into combat, I try to just tag him onto the edge of the enemy unit, so not so many of them can attack him, because he's right on the edge of the unit. Which would mean he won't get 2 extra attacks, but like I say, I don't want him to die. He's a courtier, he's there to support the unit, so if he has to do a bit of damage, tag him on the enemy unit on the edge of it, so they can't really attack him back, and he can unleash all his attacks into the unit, which is generally a much better trade-off than trying to get 2 extra attacks. And then his next ability, Victor Feast. So, a VARGHULF Courtier heals D3 wounds at the end of each combat phase in which it slew any enemy model. So, this is why I say I take him, because he's got more wounds than a CRYPT INFERNal Courtier. There we go. He's got more wounds than that courtier, so there's less chance of him being sniped off the table. And then he's also got a chance to heal, which the CRYPT INFERNal Courtier hasn't. The CRYPT Haunter Courtier, for your horrors, can heal one wound in your hero phase, but as I'm running flayers, just having a guy who can continuously, if he's killing models, regenerate wounds is a big plus. Like I said, not trying to contradict myself by saying it's good getting him in combat because he can heal wounds. Ideally keep him out of combat, but if he's taking damage from enemy shooting and he's going to keep on taking that damage, you need to keep him alive. Try and get him into a combat which he can easily win, or he can easily not take a lot of damage from, so he can be healing continuously within his D3 wounds, because he'll be slaying enemy models with those sorts of attacks. But if you do this, try and make sure he gets involved in a combat, like I say, that he can win, or he won't take a lot of damage from, and still keep him within range of your unit, so you can bring back the models. There's quite a few boxes to tick there, but in certain situations where you can do that, you can make this guy pretty survivable, and he can still add a lot to your army. Okay, and then his keywords, so Death, Mordant, Flesh-Eater Courts, Hero, Courtier, VARGHULF Courtier. So yeah, I rate this guy very high. Like I say, he is 160 points, so he's the most expensive courtier. However, he's got the best attacks. He's got hasn't got the best move, but he's got a good medium move of movement of 10 inches. He hasn't got the best save. He's got 5+ save, which is worse than the majority of the other courtiers. However, he's got 8 wounds. He can heal. He can get, like I say, very good in combat. And but most importantly, he can regenerate models for each of your different units. So that's really why I would strongly suggest you take this guy. Now on to the Ghoul Kings of the army. So there's 3 different types. We'll talk about the first one here, who's the cheapest one for 120 points, and he's just on foot. So a bit of story about him. Abhorrent Ghoul Kings. Savage beyond reason, the Abhorrent is a majestic horror, born of blood and shadow, gifted with vampiric strength and speed, and tempered by raging madness. They can reduce mortals to offil in moments. Captives by their fury, their courts throng about their feet, eager to help in the gory task. So in game, the Abhorrent Ghoul King has a 6-inch movement, a 4+ save, bravery 10 and 6 wounds. Has 1 melee weapon, gory talons and fangs, so range of 1 inch, 6 attacks, freeze to hit, freeze to wound, -1 rend, 1 damage. He has his abilities, Royal Blood, so this model heals D3 in each of your hero phases. And he is
a wizard. So on magic, an Abhorrent Ghoul King is a wizard. You can attempt to cast one spell in each of your hero phases and attempt to unbind one spell in each of the enemy hero phases. He knows the Arcane Bolt, Mystic Shield, and Black Hunger spells. So we've talked about what Arcane Bolt and Mystic Shield do. So I'll quickly go over them again. So Arcane Bolt, pick an enemy unit within 18 inches, cast on a 5. So if you get it off, the enemy unit you picked suffers D3 mortal wounds. And Mystic Shield, pick one of your own units within 18 inches and has a casting value of a 6. If you manage to cast it, that unit you picked gets +1 to its save. So 2 generic spells what every wizard gets, which is always good. And then his own unique one, Black Hunger, is the Abhorrent Ghoul King. Dark sorcery raises the cravings of his minions to terrible new heights. Black Hunger has a casting value of 5. If successfully cast, pick a Flesh Eater Court unit within 18 inches. Add 1 to the attack characteristics of all melee weapons used by that unit until your next hero phase. So that's good, especially we've been talking about ghouls make ridiculous amount of attacks anyway, so making them have an extra one is really good. What I like using this on is things like Crypt Horrors, as they've already made quite a lot of attacks, doing 2 damage attacks, potentially 3 damage attacks. So giving them an extra attack with a huge unit of them can really make them nasty. So it's not a bad one, but also, like I said, if you want to just do Mystic Shield or something, could be quite good, as your units in this army don't have particularly good saves. So let's go back up to his normal stats. So he has a movement of 6 inches, it's not bad, same as ghouls. 4+ save, that's as good as you're going to get in this army, so it's not bad. Bravery 10, what we expect, and 6 wounds. So considering this guy is not the biggest model, 6 wounds is good. And then his attack, so only 6 attacks, range 1, freeze and freeze, -1 rend, 1 damage. It's not the best damage, obviously, because it's only 1, but it's got a -1 rend to it, and he's got 6 attacks, so nothing really to complain about, especially how this guy is only 120 points. So what you can compare him against is the Crypt Haunter Courtier, because that is the Crypt Horror hero who is making more damage with his attacks. However, this guy has got rend. He heals D3 wounds in each of your hero phases instead of 1, and this guy is also a wizard. And then his command ability. Now, it says, Summon Men-at-Arms. If an Abhorrent Ghoul King uses this ability, you can set up a new unit of up to 10 Crypt Ghouls within 3 inches of any edge of the battlefield and more than 9 inches away from enemy models. They cannot move in the subsequent movement phase. To be honest, I never really have Ghoul Kings as my generals in Flesh Eater Court armies, as if I have one of the Courtiers, I can have their correspondent unit as battle line in the army, if it's a Flesh Eater Court army. So that's why I don't really take Abhorrent Ghoul Kings as general, so I never really use this ability, the command ability that is. And also, I think the command abilities are a bit, they're not really my cup of tea, shall we say. They're bringing on units from the edge of the board edge, and like I say, I'm a big fan of movement and being able to bring on units onto the game, onto the table later on in the game. However, the reason I don't like this ability, and similar ones that we're going to see with the other Abhorrent Ghoul Kings, is it's bringing on like the minimum sized units. Like a unit of 10 ghouls, it's not really going to do anything. It might be able to quickly get to an enemy's back objective, but the enemy will probably be able to react in time and easily kill them. So it's not for me personally. However, the biggest strength in the Abhorrent Ghoul King is, like I say, he's a wizard, and also he's making all your horrors and ghouls be able to re-roll those hit rolls. All hit rolls for horrors, and then hit rolls of 1 for the crypt ghouls. So this is why you take this guy in your army. And with 6 wounds, he's not the easiest character to snipe, especially with that 4+ save. So yeah, he's good. And he is actually the only he's one of the only things in the army that's actually technically dead, because he is his keywords are death and vampire, which the Abhorrent Ghoul King is the only vampire in the army. Flesh Eater Courts, hero, wizard, Abhorrent Ghoul King. So the only difference in his keywords there, instead of Mordant, it's vampire. There might be things in the future that comes in useful. We'll have to wait and see. He might be able to take a spell from one of the death magic laws that's going to be in the new battle tome. However, that might just be preserved for Legions of Nagash armies, which I wouldn't be surprised. However, we have to wait and see. So, the Abhorrent Ghoul King is not bad, especially if you're running ghouls and crypt horrors. I definitely suggest you take one of these. If you're not taking one, it's not just you're doing yourself a disservice. I mean, why would you not want to be able to re-roll those, the hit rolls? It just seems to be a really easy synergy there. So that's why I really like this guy. And like I say, 120 points. It's good, and trust me, it's a lot cheaper than the next Abhorrent Ghoul King up, which we'll get to now. So, as I've told you what an Abhorrent Ghoul King is, I'll tell you about the beasts that they take to battle, which are the Terrorgeists. Beasts of doom and darkness. Terrorgeists block out the sky as they fall upon their victims in a flurry of massive wings and dripping fangs, with screams that cut through warrior souls. These mighty creatures sweep into battle, often with blood-mad, abhorrent Ghoul Kings clinging to their backs. So, the Abhorrent Ghoul King on Terrorgeist in game. He is the second cheapest Ghoul King, I suppose, because he only costs 400 points. So, for that price, you do come to expect a lot. So, he has a move of 14 inches, has a 4-up save, bravery 10, 14 wounds. So far, not looking too bad. 14-inch move is good. 4+ save is good. Bravery 10, standard for death. And 14 wounds is better than the majority of monsters. So that's good. So, let's look at his missile weapons. So, the Terrorgeist Death Shriek has a range of 10 inches and 1 attack. So let's see what it says, because it says see below for details. So the Death Shriek, the terrifying shriek of a Terrorgeist is enough to stop a warrior's beating heart. When making a Death Shriek attack, pick a target and roll a dice, add in the number shown in the damage table above. If the total is higher than that unit's bravery, it suffers a number of mortal wounds equal to the difference. So, you roll a dice and add the number in the damage table above, which is a 6 to start with. So, that's pretty good. It's essentially the same as the Flayers, apart from instead of rolling dice and adding 1 to it, to start with, you roll a dice and you add 6 to it if the Terrorgeist hasn't taken damage. So that is, that's not bad. I've done, I've rolled a 6 of this before and done, attacked a, I think it was just 3 prosecutors, and they only had bravery 6, and I rolled a 6 on this and did 6 more wounds, and there was only a unit 3 of them, so 2 wounds apiece, they all died. So that was very nice to see. So this is a very good shooting attack. It's only got range 10, but for death, currently, this is the best shooting attack there is. I think when the, what's his name, the Prince something, the new name character we're going to get riding the zombie dragon for the vampires, Prince Verhoidre, I think maybe his name was. His shooting attack is going to trump this a lot of the time, but for the moment he's not out yet. So for the moment, this is the best. So I do like the Terrorgeist, and I don't want it to be shunned by this new name character coming out. So the shooting attack is very good. It's swingy, depends what you're fighting, but when it works, it's beautiful. So, on to the melee weapons. The King's Glory Talons. It's 5 attacks, freeze and freeze, -1 rend, 1 damage. So this is the same as the normal Ghoul King, apart from he's got 1 less attack, which, this is a much more expensive model, but he's on the back of a huge monstrosity, so it's probably quite hard for him to lean down and, scratch the enemies with his, very long nails that should probably be cut. So, yeah, not bad. It's 5 attacks, freeze and freeze, and it's got a -1 rend to it. 1 damage, it's alright. And then, so now we move on to the Terrorgeist melee weapons. Now, I want to be a little bit cautious here because, now, like I said, the Flesh-Eater Courts don't look like they're going to be in the new Battle Tome. However, there are different Terrorgeist and Zombie Dragons in the new Battle Tome, and their characteristics, their stats have been changed. So,
The Flesh Eater Court ones might change with it, and this might just be a simple update in the app, which is more than possible. However, as that hasn't happened yet, I'm going to read it as it is now, but bear in mind this might change. So, with that out of the way, let's have a look. So the Terrorgeist Skeletal Claws starts with 4 attacks if he hasn't taken any damage, and goes down to 2 attacks when he's taken, 13 damage and he's only on 1 wound left. So, the Skeletal Claws starts with 4 attacks, force the hit, freeze the wound, -1 rend, D3 damage. So, very swingy, could be terrible, but it could be really good as well. Potential to do 12 damage on that, potential to do 4 damage and all things go through. It's not bad. When it pays off, it pays off. And then the next attack is the Terrorgeist Fanged Maw. 3 attacks, has a range 3 this one, so pretty good. And the Skeletal Claws is range 2, I didn't mention that. So, the Fanged Maw, range 3, 3 attacks, force the hit, freeze the wound, -2 rend, D6 damage. Now this is the attack that's going to make or break what you are trying to kill, essentially, because D6, yeah, it is very swingy, but a lot of the zombie, well, not just zombie dragons and stuff, but a lot of dragons are like this. They haven't got flat damage, a lot of it is swingy, a lot of it is D6s or D3s, so it is normal. However, this guy has got a lovely ability, which we'll get to now because it's just too good to ignore. The Gaping Maw. If the wound roll for an attack made by the Terrorgeist Fanged Maw is 6 or more, the creature bites a great chunk out of its prey or even swallows it whole. The attack inflicts 6 mortal wounds instead of its normal damage. So, if the Fanged Maw gets a 6th wound, it does 6 mortal wounds instead of normal damage. This doesn't come off all that much, but when it does, it can... Well, it changes the combat he's fighting in automatically. I've had it where he's... the best I got it was... I got my 3 attacks through. 2 of them did got 6s to wound, so it just did a 12 mortal wounds flat. This was against a Liberator unit with a 2-up save, rerolling 1s. Best example for it to be against. Did 12 mortal wounds straight away, so it killed 6 of them. And then he failed his save at a -2 rend, and that made me feel very good. Take that if you've got a 2-up save, rerolling 1s. -2 rend, managed to get through. And then D6 damage, I rolled a 6, so it did 18 damage in total, which was really, really good. But this was at a tournament, and it didn't really make a difference because he had a unit of 30 of them, and I still lost the game, and I didn't kill any of his units outright. However, as that's how the game was going in that situation, being able to kill 18 in total I did of his Liberators did make me feel good, and especially how 9 of the bloody Liberators with their 2-up stage rerolling 1s died in one combat against the Terrorgeist alone. That was really good. So yeah, that's a great ability. Now the new Terrorgeist and the new Battle Tome looks like it's going to do 6 mortal wounds on a 6 to hit, which would be really good. I mean, the negatives of that is that there's easier ways to make the enemy -1 to hit, admittedly. However, there's ways to make you plus the hit as well. So if the enemy can't make you minus the hit, and there's things like damn terrain on the board, well, you can make this thing do insane damage if it's going to change to do mortal wounds on 6s to hit. So that's the Terrorgeist attack. So swingy, but when it works, it works really well and it can just decimate things. And then its abilities. We've talked about the Death Shriek. We've talked about the Gaping Maw. The Terrorgeist, it can fly. And then its next ability is Infested. So when a Terrorgeist is finally destroyed, it explodes into a swarm of bats that feast on those nearby. When this model is slain, inflict D3 mortal wounds on each unit, friend or foe, within 3 inches of it before removing the model. So yep, it's good. You want to charge this thing into the combat and wait for the perfect combat to do that. And then if it dies, you might have your own units nearby, and there's chances they'll take mortal wounds. But the enemy will take it as well. So try and place this model in the right place if you know it's going to die, and let it go off in a bang essentially. And then Royal Blood. This model heals D3 wounds in each of your hero phases. So this makes it a lot more survivable, especially on things like Duality or Death, where you've got to capture the 2 objectives in the middle of the board with your heroes. Bear in mind that is the battle plan, so your enemy's probably going to try and kill your hero as quickly as possible. being able to heal D3 just makes him more survivable. And he's got a 4+ save, so that's not bad. And like I say, if you want this guy to just go around places and wreck everyone's day, you could sacrifice a damn terrain if it's on the board, giving him +1 to hit, and he'll be able to heal D3 back straight away, so he could take no damage from it, especially how he'll get his death save as well. So there are his abilities, and then magic. And upon Ghoul King on Terrorgeist, it's a wizard. He can attempt to cast 1 spell on each of your hero phases, and attempt to unbind 1 spell on each enemy hero phase. He knows the Arcane Bolt, Mystic Shield, and Unholy Vitality spells. So we talked about what Arcane Bolt and Mystic Shield did, so let's look to see what Unholy Vitality does. So Unholy Vitality, and upon Ghoul King, infuses the crooked bodies of his minions with dark magic, making it incredibly difficult for their enemies to stop their ravenous onslaught. Unholy Vitality has casting value of 6. If successfully cast, pick a Flesh Eater Court unit within 18 inches. Until your next hero phase, roll a dice each time that model from the unit you picked suffers a wound or mortal wound. On a roll of 5 or more, the wound is ignored. So this is one of the best spells I've used, especially for a casting value of 6. In my previous tournament army, which I haven't got the Terrorgeist in now because I think I really need the numbers, but in my previous tournament army, how I used to run it, I'd have 9 flares. It was my biggest unit in my army. It's what I used to do as much damage to the enemy as I could, and I'd just chuck at the enemy, hold them back, all those sorts of things. And putting this spell on them gave them the flares have a 5-up save normally, and then they had a 5-up ward save essentially. So on 5 and 6s, they ignored the damage, and then if they're within 6 inches of a hero, which they usually were, I did my best to make sure they were, they get a death save on a 6-up. So looking back at that, they've got a 5+ save. I quite often stuck Mystic Shield on them as well. So they had a standard, if the enemy didn't have any rend, a 4+ save, a 5+ save, and then a 6+ save. And bear in mind, you're regenerating 4 wound models to this unit, so it made them really hard to crack. So that was a very good ability for that. Also, if you're playing Duality or Death, like I say, and you need to put the Terrorgeist on the objective to make him survive, turn 1 he's got 14-inch move, so he can easily get there, and you can put Unholy Vitality onto himself, so then he'll have a 4-up save, then a 5-up save, and then a 6-up. And if you've got another wizard in your army and you really need this guy to stay alive, put Mystic Shield on him, and if the enemy hasn't got any rend, he's got a 3-up save, 5-up save, and a 6-up save, and a healing D3 wounds in your hero phases, so incredibly survivable, this guy. With all these things put on him, all these buffs on him, and all these boxes ticked off. So that's it for his abilities. He's got command abilities called Summon Royal Guard. If an abhorrent Ghoul King uses this ability, then you can set up a new unit of up to 3 Crypt Horrors or Crypt Flares within 3 inches of any edge of the battlefield and more than 9 inches from enemy models. They cannot move in the subsequent movement phase. So, again, I've told you my feelings about the abhorrent Ghoul command abilities, how, bringing on models from Tail Wedge, it's not bad, it's good, especially how this one can do Crypt Horrors or Flares. However, you can only bring on the minimum unit sizes, which 3 Crypt Horrors, 3 Crypt Flares can do more damage than 10 ghouls. However, I'd rather have a bigger unit of Crypt Horrors or Crypt Flares at the start. So, and like I say, I like having the Flare hero as my general, or the Horror hero as my general, just to make their corresponding units battle line in my army. So, depends. Some people like the command ability, but it's personally not for me. And then the keywords: Death, Vampire, Terrorgeist, Flesh Eater, Quartz, Monster, Hero, Wizard, Abhorrent, Ghoul King. So it's the most keywords we've seen so far, but is essential really. One of them's just saying it's Terrorgeist, the other one's just saying it's a Vampire because the Ghoul King's on top of it. It's Death, obviously. It's a Wizard. It's a Monster, obviously, and it's a Hero. And obviously it's a Flesh Eater Quartz. So pretty standard that. But a War Scroll, 400 points. He is good. It is a lot of points, and he is swingy. So some games you feel like he's not worth his points, and then some games he will be the thing that saves the game for you and really turns the battle around and definitely makes up his points. But also just like an awesome model, really. I mean, I love it. I've got 2 of these. I've got one on climbing down from a tree, ripping apart some Stormcast, and then I bought 2 Terrorgeist kits, bashed them together, stuck it in the forest, and just built one twice the size because I really like this model. So I'd say definitely as a collector, definitely get one of these. And then Flesh Eater Court Army, you know, get one of these, paint them up, use them, see how you feel about them. But no, he can be worth his points, most definitely. So the next and last model on our list to do for the Flesh Eater Courts is the Abhorrent Ghoul King on Zombie Dragon. Now, you know plenty about the Abhorrent Ghoul King by now, but I'll just tell you a little bit about the Zombie Dragons. So, Zombie Dragons, incredibly regal bundles of ancient bone and flapping flesh. Zombie Dragons soar above Abhorrent Ghoul King's armies, and bound by dark magic, they are horrors of the battlefield, with claws the size of blades and fangs fit to punch through the thickest armour, and breath that is death itself. So in game, the Abhorrent Ghoul King on Zombie Dragon. It's very similar to the Terrorgeist in its wheel stats. Well, I say it's very similar, it's exactly the same. So it has a 14-inch movement, 4+ save, bravery 10 and 14 wounds. So exactly the same as Terrorgeist there. However, the rest of the stats will different. So the missile weapons, the Zombie Dragon's Pestilent Breath. Now, like I said with the Terrorgeist, in the new Death Battle Tome coming out, the Zombie Dragon and Terrorgeist for the other armies in Death have been updated, so the ones for the Flesh Eater Courts might stay the same or they might be updated. We do not know at this moment, but I will read this as it is at the moment. So the missile weapons. Zombie Dragon's Pestilent Breath. Range 9 inches, 1 attack, freeze to hit, and then it has a starter wound, so that means it starts on a 2 to wound, and then when it takes 13 damage, when it's only got 1 wound left, you need to get a 6 to wound. So, has 1 attack, hits on a 3, wounds on a 2, -3 rend, d6 damage. So, yeah, that's good. I mean, like, range only 9, yeah, you know, that's not the best, but getting on a 3, not too hard to achieve, especially there's a rule ability it has that makes it even easier. And then wounded on a 2 to start with, which is just like, you know, if you get a 1, then, you know, unlucky, basically. And then -3 rend, which is the best rend you can get. I'm currently unaware of what springs to mind of anything that has rend -4. If there is, so let me know. But as far as I'm aware at the moment, there's only -3 rend is the highest, so that's not going to many things aren't going to save against that. I mean, the thing that I like to bring up a lot, a Liberator having a 2-up save rerolling 1s, is now only going to have a 5-up save rerolling 1s against this, and then d6 damage. So it's nice compared to the Terrorgeist shooting attack. The Zombie Dragons one is going to be a more constant, because if you happen to go against really high bravery armies, the Terrorgeist one is harder to get off. Whereas the Zombie Dragon one, as long as you can, you know, to hit and to wound and the enemy fails to save, it's always going to do damage. You're not reliant on what the enemy's bravery is. So it's probably a more reliable attack. However, the Terrorgeist, if you're lucky, can just do an insane amount of damage. So not a bad shooting attack there, especially for death. And then a melee weapon, so the King's Gory Talons. And this is exactly the same as the King on top of the Ghoul King, on top of the Terrorgeist, sorry. So has a range of 1, 5 attacks, freeze to hit, freeze to wound, -1 rend, 1 damage. And then the Zombie Dragons more. So this is a 3-inch range, has 3 attacks, force to hit, freeze to wound, -2 rend, d6 damage. So this is the same as the Terrorgeist one, it just doesn't have the really nice mortal wounding ability. And it's the same as most dragons, you know. It's swingy. When it can go really well, it can do loads of damage. When it doesn't, you know, it's not its best day. And then the Zombie Dragon's Claws. Now, it starts with a star symbol, so that means it starts with 7 attacks, and then when it's taking 13 damage and it has 1 wound left, it has 3 attacks. So, starting with 7 attacks, 4 to hit, 3 to wound, -1 rend, 2 damage. So, you know, hitting on a 4, you know, is average for most things. Wounding on a 3, you know, that's good. And then a -1 rend, you know, rend, always good. You know, even if it's -1, it's still definitely better than not having rend, obviously. And then 2 damage. So you can do quite, if you fail to do damage with the maw, if you get your, even if you, the enemy fails to save and then you're unlucky with your d6 damage, you can still do a lot of damage with the claws. You can still, the zombie dragon can still redeem itself essentially. So there's attacks, not bad, like I say, subject to change, but at the moment, pretty damn good. Okay, and then the abilities. So, an abhorrent Ghoul King on Zombie Dragon can fly. Sorry if I'm mixing up the words, it's just because basically, well, this is the same kit as the Terrorgeist one. There's a lot of things that are similar on it. So apologies if I mix a couple of little things up. I always correct myself. Right, back to the War Scroll. So, abilities. Pestilence Breath. Roll a dice when you attack with the Zombie Dragon's Pestilence Breath. If the roll is equal to or less than the number of models in the target unit, the attack scores a hit without needing to make a hit roll. Okay, so with the Pestilence Breath, remember you're hitting on a 3. So if you target a big unit of, let's say, a unit of 10 models, you hit automatically, and then you wound on a 2. -3 rend, d6 damage. And if you're attacking a unit with that many models, they're more than likely not going to be able to save against -3 rend, so d6 damage. However, even if you pick a unit with, like, let's say an elite unit, let's just say like a unit of 4, like Draconian Guard or something like that, before you roll to hit, roll a dice. If you get under, is it if you get under, or no, if you get equal? So there's a unit of 4, roll a dice, so you get a 4 less, hit it without need a hit roll. If you fail, then roll a dice on a 3 or more, you hit. It makes it very easy to get off your Pestilence Breath, so that's always good. And then Royal Blood, so this is the same as the Terrorgeist, so this model heals D3 wounds in each of your hero phases, because essentially this is just the Ghoul King healing those wounds because he's a vampire. Right, and then on to magic. So an abhorrent Ghoul King on Zombie Dragon is a wizard. He can attempt to cast 1 spell in each of your hero phases and attempt to unbind 1 spell in each enemy hero phase. He knows the Arcane Bolt, Mystic Shield and Feeding Frenzy spells. So by now we know what Arcane Bolt and Mystic Shield does. So Feeding Frenzy, we'll get to that now. So as the abhorrent Ghoul King imposes his dark will upon his minions, they see a ripe banquet before them and descend upon it with an insatiable hunger. Feeding Frenzy has a casting value of 6. If successfully cast until your next hero phase, you can re-roll all failed wound rolls, flesh-eater court models from your army within 10 inches of the caster in the combat phase. Okay, so first thing to point out here is that for models within 10 inches of the caster will receive the benefit. Do not get that mixed up with units, because I've done it in the past. Everyone does it because you're so used to units being ranged, but it's only models, so it's quite a small range, but because how big the base is on a Zombie Dragon is anyway, it's a big radius generally. So, but bear in mind you want to keep your Zombie Dragon quite near to the units you want to benefit from this. So what I tend to do with this is make sure he's right behind or next to my CRYPT. As I talked about, they get to re-roll those hit rolls because they're within 15 inches of a Ghoul King, or an abhorrent Ghoul King even, which the abhorrent Ghoul King on Zombie Dragon is, of course. He's got the keyword. So they're doing that. So you've got a unit of 9 of them. If you're clever with your movement, they're re-rolling all failed hit rolls. And then you get the spell off and you're clever with your movement, they're re-rolling all failed wound rolls. And they're doing 2 damage each. And if they get 6 to wound, they do 3 damage each. And then this is when this unit really starts to just rip through things, especially if you use the Dark Hunger spell from the abhorrent Ghoul King on foot. If you've got one of those in your army as well, gives them an extra attack, so your CRYPT are making 4 attacks each. And then re-rolling failed hit rolls, re-rolling failed wound rolls. Unit of 9 of them, they will just ruin people's day. So yeah, how all this stacks up and stuff. There's a lot of synergies in this army, which is nice, especially for death at the moment. I'm sure when the Bastion comes out, there's going to be a loads of more synergies and really how they link together all the separate death fractions. But currently at the moment, it's really only the Flesh-Eater Courts that have so much synergy just within themselves. So that's just another example of it, the Feeding Frenzy there. And then lastly, the command abilities. So Summon Courtier. If an abhorrent Ghoul King uses this ability, then you can set up a new Courtier model within 3 inches of any edge of the battlefield and more than 9 inches away from any enemy models. It cannot move in the subsequent movement phase. So I've told you what I thought about these sort of command abilities. I'm not a big fan of them. I don't really use them. However, the Summon Courtier one, in my opinion, is the best one. Because, like I say, with the summoning the ghouls on, with the Ghoul King on, summoning 10 crypt ghouls onto the table edge, that's not really going to, in most cases, change the fate of the battle. And then the one with the Terrorgeist summoning, 3 crypt horrors or 3 crypt flares to the board edge, it's not really going to change the course of the battle again. However, this one, being able to summon a Courtier onto the battle, could be really good for reinforcing units that are being really depleted, that have been taking loads of damage. And you think, I wasn't originally thinking I was going to need another VARGHULF just generally to support everything in my army. I'll bring one of those on. So it can be useful for that. And also, like I was saying, compared to the bringing on like the crypt flares and horrors or the ghouls, you're bringing in minimum unit sizes. With when you're bringing on a Courtier, so one of your heroes, with a hero it's a single model anyway, so you're getting as much use for it as if you were deploying it in your turn to start. Essentially, you're not bringing in the minimum size unit of a hero, because a hero is just one single model, if you see what I mean. So you're not putting yourself at a disadvantage, really. So I would say it's the most useful out of the command abilities, but I'd still rather have a, like I say, one of the Courtiers as my general, and then one of the corresponding units become battle line and Flesh Eater Core army. So that's the Zombie Dragon, and then the last things about it, the Abhorrent Ghoul King on Zombie Dragon, is the keywords. So Death, Vampire, Zombie Dragon, Flesh Eater Courts, Monster, Hero, Wizard, Abhorrent Ghoul King. So exactly the same as the one for the Terrorgeist, apart from obviously instead of Terrorgeist, it's Zombie Dragon. So the last and most expensive unit in the Flesh Eater Core army done, costing 440 points for that. Abhorrent Ghoul King on Zombie Dragon is a lot of points, but as I hope I've shown you just there, he can be worth it. He's a bit swingy like all sort of dragons, but his spell's really good and he synergizes very well with the army. So with that done, that brings us to the end of the units for the Flesh Eater Courts. I hope this has been a informative video for you, as it's been quite a long one to do, and I know I said that there's a chance when the new battle tome comes out it could change the information that I've just given you here in this video, but it's a bit of a risk, but I feel pretty confident that they're not going to put the Flesh Eater Courts in the new battle tome. So the information given here today should be just as useful as it is now as it will be in the foretelling future. And I just really wanted to get this video out before the new battle tome, because I really like the Flesh Eaters. I mean, I plan on doing an allegiance ability video as well, because this one has already taken a long time so far. So add the allegiance abilities onto this, I fear it would be too long. And I want to go into the battalions as well for the Flesh Eater Courts, and talk about how to use them in the game and the tactics and stuff behind them as well, into like list building. These are the sort of videos I'll probably be doing leading up until the battle tome release on Saturday, because like I said, I don't really want to be doing death videos, but here I am already making like over an hour and a half video about death. But if I don't make death videos, it really feels like I'm ending a sort of climax leading up to the battle tome release. So I want to keep on, talking about death and all that, and try and get, it gets myself, hopefully it gets you guys excited about this big release we're getting on Saturday. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if so, please like, subscribe and comment below, as I always say, that does really help me produce more videos. And until next time, remember, Nagash is all, and all is one in Nagash.